In this third video, I will be talking about estimating reserve, and that would be related to contingency or management. And I'm going to split this board into two parts. I'm going to basically draw two pictures. But before I go to those pictures, I want to highlight an important concept. One of the leading sources for project estimating in capital project I had mentioned in the first video is an organization called the Association for Advancement of Cost Engineer International, and they come up with a classification system. Many organizations adopt the AACE description, or they use their own model. And remember, we discussed there are different classification of estimate. Since I'm talking about SUKAD way of doing things, we talked about class 1, class 2, or class 3. Refer to the first video if you haven't seen it yet. So basically, across the life cycle, we have those three estimates. Recently, there were a couple of posts online, and that created a lot of heated discussion, and it shows clearly some common misunderstanding. Even I think we think, based on the picture that was shared from the construction supplement of the PMBOK guide, it's significant error, and that picture in the book, it's clear that whoever posted there probably does not understand the concept I'm going to share with you in a minute. You can refer to the construction supplement of the PMBOK if you're interested. However, what I'm talking about today is not necessarily limited to construction or capital project. If you remember, we talked about the life cycle, and we said the life cycle includes the discovery phase, the development phase, and the delivery phase. And the discovery phase, we have the feasibility study. And we said we do a class 1. Let me just put them here, and I'll erase them maybe later. The class 1 is in the feasibility. A class 2 during PM planning. And class 3 is in the definition stage of a project, or with the detailed plan. These are the three class estimates that we do in the CAMP model. And usually the class 3 is what we recommend. It goes to the gate number 5, which is the point where the project final approval is happening. So the class 1 is usually used to authorize the project initially, and that leads to the project authorization or the charter document. Class 2, if you work on small to medium project, maybe it's something you can skip. On large project, it's just kind of an estimate that help us to monitor to make sure we are still on track, or the project cost is still on track. And class 3 is what you use for final approval. Now, how do we use contingency, and how do we calculate contingency for this project? And how are the accuracy of these estimates? I'm going to start with the curve that I think its construction supplement include, and it is an error. If we include a graph like this, obviously this middle line, the mean, is ideally to represent the 100% cost of the project. And what do we mean by this? That means the actual cost of the project, which is, when can we tell? When do we know this number? Obviously, at the end of the project, we should know exactly what that number is, because work is complete. However, if we divide this kind of time span, and this is time, obviously this is time. This is the time span for the project from 0 to 100%. And in this case, 0 is concept. Okay, so from the concept to the end of the project. So if we look at this time span, and we look at the level of accuracy, this curve here is accuracy, or maybe related to scope definition as well. And we look at the project into stages. If we are in the feasibility stage, you can imagine the scope definition is very low. We don't have a lot of detail. Because we don't have a lot of detail, uncertainty is high. And how do we translate that into project is that usually the number that we estimate for the feasibility study in the class 1 estimate, usually it is a range. It could be somewhere here or here. Now, depend on what source you use. This could be minus 50%, and this could be plus 100%. So that will be 200%. So if this is 100, and that will probably be the 200% data point. So obviously, at the feasibility study, the number you come up with, it could be somewhere here or here. Why? Remember, we don't have a lot of data. All what we know, maybe let's just give you an example. We want to build a petrochemical plant on an island in Singapore that is going to produce 1,000 tons of X product. That's probably all what we know. Or we are going to build a tower in the Business Bay area of Dubai, or on Manhattan Island in New York. Okay? So we don't have a lot of detail. We probably have the type of the project, the capacity of the project. So basically a building that can occupy 200 apartments or whatever the case, or a chemical plant or a refinery that can produce 1,000, or a bottling plant or the juice plant, or whatever the case might be. You have to define the capacity. So at this stage, probably that's all what we know. The type of product we're going to produce and the capacity. So based on the limited detail that we have, the range could be huge. Now, as you imagine, as you start to progress the project, maybe I shouldn't use this for now. As we start to progress the project, the detail improve. The scope detail improve. So with time, scope detail increase. Actually, let's do it this way. Let me use this side of the board for now. So with time, the scope detail increase. Uncertainty decrease. Because uncertainty decrease, accuracy of the estimate increase. Now, what does it mean? What it means is that, let me say this is the stage gate 5, which is where we do the class 3. At this stage, so class 3, sorry, I should have been, class 3 give us a stage gate 5. At this period of time, obviously before we reach there, so we have stage gate 2 here, stage gate 3, stage gate 4, and the SUKAD model. If we do the first estimate here, the accuracy is so high. If we do another estimate here, the accuracy drop. And if we do it there, the accuracy drop further. I have to erase this again. So basically, I know the curve might not be 100% good. In a way, what we are saying is that you can see the curve is like a cone, is narrowing down. And of course, it keeps narrowing down until it closes at the end. So in this here, we probably do the class 1. Here we probably have the class 2. And here we have the class 3 estimate. So you notice, as we go forward, the scope definition is increasing, uncertainty is decreasing, and therefore the accuracy of the estimate, the range of the estimate is decreasing. And in this case, it could be plus or minus 10%. That's a common number we use, plus or minus 10%. Okay? That at this level. And this is the number we use for final approval. Okay, now after that, we go into detailed implementation. We start to implement here in this period of time. We are implementing. Therefore, the more work we do, the more uncertainty will be taken away, and of course, will go away and to reach the final point. Now, before I go to the next curve, I have to explain something here. One more data. What does all of this relate to contingency and estimate reserve? Well, ideally, you have a high range over here. You don't see a lot, so you have to apply some contingency. Maybe that will be better shown in the next curve. So in this case, we will have a contingency amount, then we reduce it here, and we reduce it there. Now, how do we do that? Time for the next curve. So, more erasing. Again, I'm going to use a timeline. So this is time 0 to 100. And in this case, instead of accuracy, I'm going to look at this number being the 100% final cost. When would we know that? Which is basically this line represent, let me use red here. This point here is represented in this data point. Okay? Now, when would we know this? Well, we'll only know it. So we can calculate the 100% when? When we are done. Only at the end I would know what the final cost. Therefore, the challenge for us in project management as estimator, and maybe you guys don't know this, I started my career after my master's in estimating. So this stuff is almost 30 years old in my head. So our objective, a good estimator, a good planner, a good project management process and system and procedure should allow us, when we want to estimate project, regardless of where we are on the life cycle, our intention, our objective, our target is to predict this number with a high level of accuracy. Now we know the accuracy here is questionable. There's a big range. So how can we approximate? So let's say we are, depend on where you are, I'm going to say here, we are in the feasibility stage. We are in the PM planning stage. We are in the definition stage. Yeah? Going back to that life cycle. Okay? How can we, when we are here, predict what this number should be? Well, based on the information you have on the project, your system, your data might allow you to see this much. That's what we see. Based on our historical data, we can only predict or estimate this much, which is, we know we have this uncertainty and this level of accuracy. So how can we approximate this number? That's the power of maturity. That's the power of organizations that have a good project management mature system and from history, because based on our history, we know every time we estimate a project like this at the feasibility stage, we probably come up with a number here. This could be 60%, could be 65%, could be 70%. I have no idea what that would be because that's dependent on every organization. So the challenge for us is how to predict this number, how to go from here to there. Now, of course, we don't know what this number is yet, but we want to predict it with high level of accuracy. In order to do this, to cover this uncertainty, that is where we use contingency. Maybe I should put it in red. So to predict this, What we need is, I will be erasing this in a second, contingency. So we need to figure out how much money is that. Now, and I can tell you on my history, in my capital project experience, if we are dealing with a brand new project, so for new facilities, usually it's not uncommon to have about 25% contingency at that point. Now, of course, I'm drawing this curve here that will come to the 100%, maybe not. Maybe will come slightly lower than the 100%, or maybe higher than the 110%. We don't know exactly what the number will be until we're done at the end. But the objective is to come in as close as possible to this number. Otherwise, if we don't know this, and this is one sign of the high predictability, the high level of maturity in organization allow us to come up with high predictable number. Because management are going to make a decision to proceed with the project, to issue a charter and to continue based on our number. So if the accuracy of this number is not dependable, is not something management can trust, then we could be probably putting ourselves in a position where we are wasting a lot of money because the project could be canceled later if we underestimate, or if we overestimate, we could cancel a project that is really a good project. So we should try to, based on historical data and record, to really come up with this good number. Okay, let me erase these things here. Now let's say we came to the next level. So now we are doing the project management planning, which means we have the requirement defined, we have more detail, but still not enough detail. There may be what we can estimate based on what we see in front of us should be more than this, right? Should be more, because I see more detail. So I should be coming up. This number will probably go up. Yeah? Where does this money come from? This money, this growth between this number and this number come from where? Well, we have already estimated that in contingency. So technically, some of that contingency money is allocated there. However, we still don't see the full thing. Now, what does it mean? That means I still have to apply some contingency here. And notice I show it maybe higher. Again, it could be higher, it could be lower, but we need to approximate as much as we can. So this growth from here, so notice this blue has grown. Overall, it shouldn't grow. It should stay within the range. Now, does it always stay? No. Yeah? Theory says it should, this final number should be close. Notice I'm not saying should be exact, it should be close. Close in which way? Again, plus or minus, assuming you have good historical data, the project objective and scope have not changed, because if you change your objective, everything we're talking about here is maybe need to be readdressed in a different way. So this growth here, some of it is absorbed from the high amount of contingency. Remember, over here, we had a 25% contingency. Over here, we'll probably have 15% contingency. So technically what we're saying here, we are allowing of natural growth of 10%, but we still have to have 15 to go. I'm almost done with this. Now we go to the definition stage where we have more detail. In capital project, that means we have done the, let's say if we're dealing with real estate business, that we have done the architectural design, but maybe not the detail engineering yet. So some detail is done. Obviously what you can expect, we see more now, but we are still short to predict that final number. In this case, usually what many organizations allow is about 10% contingency. So that is how we are showing. Of course, if we do maybe a class 4 estimate after we can do engineering, and the engineering will give us more data. As we do construction, we get more data until we reach the end. But usually, as a project, we do these 3 estimates, class 1, class 2, class 3. Accuracy is very low, uncertainty is high, so we need to have a higher level of contingency. As we proceed more, we know more. Some of the uncertainty is reducing, so we have less contingency. Even as a definition stage, we still have uncertainty that we apply the contingency reserve on that. Now notice I use 10% here. Is that the practice? Well, if you read the Pumbag Guide, if you read Rita Mulcahy, exam prep, and a lot of these references, they will tell you, oh no, contingency has to be calculated based on the expected monetary value of all of the risk, You know, so it could be a calculation. It could be 5.6%, it could be 7.8%. Obviously, if you do it academically, if you do identify all the risk and you calculate the expected monetary value for all the risk, you can calculate the contingency amount maybe to the based on $1. However, again, most organizations, based on historical data, usually they know at this time whether we want to apply 10%, so whether this number would be 10% or 8% or 5%, usually based on their history, they would know exactly what percentage, and that will in a way save us a lot of time, but also give us relatively accurate number to work with. That's how we estimate. So we covered estimating contingency. Now, of course, we can talk about control of contingency, but that may be another topic. But that's the role. Yeah? And somebody has posted a post on LinkedIn and asked me to basically give him an idea, is that how do we do some of this stuff? Well, here we go. That explain what this curve is, explain how the accuracy should increase because the uncertainty is reduced as we go forward, and we'll be able to compensate for that uncertainty with the amount of contingencies that has to be proper. How much amount? Based on your historical data. Now, notice I use 25% here. I can tell you in the petrochemical industry where I started my career, if we are dealing with a project inside an existing chemical plant, which we call brownfield or revamp project, so it's like a remodeling project, this contingency could go up to 40%. Because uncertainty is even higher, because we are working in a living environment, different than if you are working in a grassroots or greenfield facility where you know that you have a clean area. So 25% would be applicable for those situations. The message I'm trying to tell you, do not use these numbers that I'm giving you as they are, because these numbers should come from your own organizational historical data. This is why it's very important to close your phases and to close your project. This is the only way you can improve your maturity as an organization in the management of project, by having that historical record and data. I will end over here. I have two fun stories I want to share with you. I will share them in video number 4.